Before there was Bitcoin, there was PayPal. But not the PayPal you know today. The button on every website, the app on your phone. No, the original PayPal was something very different. Its founders, a group of young, ambitious Silicon Valley engineers, weren't just trying to make online payments easier. They wanted to create a new kind of money. Something borderless, something independent, something that would bypass banks and cut governments out of the loop. Sound familiar? It should, because before Satoshi Nakamoto ever hit publish on his white paper, PayPal almost built Bitcoin. But then, something went wrong. The vision shifted, and the world's first mainstream cryptocurrency slipped through their fingers. This is the story of how Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, and a handful of Silicon Valley rebels came within inches of creating Bitcoin, and why they gave it up. Welcome to the Crypto Historian, where the past is encrypted, and the truth is worth mining. To understand how close PayPal came to inventing Bitcoin, or at least a decentralized, permissionless digital currency, we need to go back to the late 90s, a chaotic experimental time in Silicon Valley. This was the age of dot-com fever. Investors were throwing money at anything with a website and a dream. And two small startups, Confinity and X.com, no, not the platform formerly known as Twitter, were about to collide in a way that would change the internet forever. Let's start with Confinity. Founded in 1998 by Peter Thiel and Max Levchin, Confinity's original mission was simple: create a handheld device payment system. They weren't thinking about global currencies or decentralized finance. They just wanted a better way to move money between Palm Pilots, the hottest mobile tech at the time. But as they built the system, they realized something. Payments weren't just a feature, they were the feature, the killer app of the internet. At the same time, another young entrepreneur was thinking much, much bigger. Elon Musk, fresh off the sale of his first startup, Zip2, was dreaming about the future of finance. He wanted to build a company that would completely disrupt banking, not just replace checks and credit cards, but create a new financial system altogether. In 1999, Musk founded X.com, a direct competitor to Confinity. But X.com had a more radical vision. Musk didn't just want to process payments, he wanted to rethink money itself. He wanted to create a global digital currency that anyone, anywhere could use without permission, without fees, and without borders. It was in many ways a proto-Bitcoin, just a decade too early, and without the cryptographic breakthrough of the blockchain. In 2000, the two companies merged. Confinity had the early user base, the technical talent, and the payments expertise. X.com had the vision, the ambition, and the boldness to think beyond just peer-to-peer payments. Together, they became PayPal. And in its earliest days, PayPal's founders talked openly about creating a borderless digital money that would replace traditional banks. A currency for the internet, a financial revolution, it almost happened. But as we'll see in the next section, vision is one thing. Reality is something else entirely. If you listen to the early interviews with guys like Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, and Reid Hoffman, you start to realize that these weren't just Silicon Valley tech bros trying to cash in on the dot-com bubble. They were thinkers, philosophers, people who genuinely believed they could reshape the financial system. And they had a simple but radical idea. Money shouldn't be tied to a country, it shouldn't be managed by a government, and it shouldn't be controlled by a bank. It should be free, free to move, free to send, free to spend. Thiel, in particular, was influenced by the writings of economists like Friedrich Hayek, who argued that free markets should extend all the way down to money itself. In his 1976 book, The Denationalization of Money, Hayek proposed a world where private currencies would compete freely without state control. Thiel loved this idea. Musk, too. They weren't trying to just build a payment app, they were trying to build a financial revolution. And they saw the internet as the perfect place to do it. After all, the internet itself was decentralized, permissionless, and borderless. It didn't care about national boundaries or local regulations. It was a global network, and in their minds, it needed a global currency. Musk was particularly obsessed with this idea. In a 1999 interview, he talked about eliminating the need for traditional banks. He imagined a world where money could be moved instantly, anonymously, and without fees. He wanted to cut out the middlemen, the bankers, the brokers, the regulators, and create a peer-to-peer financial network where everyone could send money as easily as they sent email. But as visionary as this was, it had a massive flaw: trust. Unlike Bitcoin, which relies on cryptographic proof and decentralized consensus, early PayPal was still a centralized system. The company itself held the money. They controlled the ledgers. They had to verify the transactions. And that made them a target for fraudsters, a target for regulators, a target for anyone who wanted to exploit the system. In 2000, Musk wrote a vision memo for X.com, laying out his dream of a worldwide financial platform. He described a global currency that would function like a digital wallet, storing not just dollars, but every form of money, including crypto-like assets. It was ambitious, it was idealistic, and it was just a few technical breakthroughs away from being Bitcoin. But as we'll see, like an early SpaceX booster rocket, reality has a way of crashing even the boldest ideas back to Earth. Now, if you had invested in PayPal in the early 2000s, you might have felt like you were backing a sure thing. The company was growing fast. It was signing up thousands of users a day. It had a visionary founder in Elon Musk and a brilliant strategist in Peter Thiel. But behind the scenes, things weren't so smooth. As we've already noted, PayPal had a trust problem. When you try to replace banks and financial institutions with a digital platform, you're not just challenging tradition. You're also putting a massive target on your back. And that target? It attracted some serious trouble. First, there was the fraud. In the early days, PayPal was losing millions of dollars a month to hackers, scammers, and fake accounts. People figured out that they could exploit PayPal's payment system, sending themselves fake payments or double spending money before the system could catch up. It got so bad that at one point over 50% of PayPal's transactions were fraudulent. For a startup burning cash just to stay alive, this was a catastrophe. Second, there was the regulation. Governments weren't exactly thrilled about a borderless, anonymous digital currency running outside their control. PayPal had to comply with a patchwork of financial regulations, from anti-money laundering laws to know your customer rules. It quickly became clear that true decentralization, the kind Musk and Thiel dreamed about, was going to be impossible under these conditions. Unlike Bitcoin, which would later avoid this problem with pseudonymity and decentralization, PayPal was a centralized company with a physical headquarters and bank accounts. That meant it could be regulated, sued, and shut down. Finally, there was the competition. As PayPal grew, it attracted the attention of eBay, the online auction giant. At first, this was great news. eBay users loved PayPal. It was faster and more convenient than traditional payment methods. But then eBay started getting nervous. They realized that if PayPal became too powerful, it could control the very payments flowing through their platform. And so in 2002, eBay made a bold move. They acquired PayPal for $1.5 billion in stock. It was a massive win for PayPal's founders, but it also marked the end of their dream for a borderless, decentralized financial system. After the acquisition, PayPal was forced to tighten its security, comply with financial regulations, and scale back its more radical ideas. It became just another financial middleman, exactly the kind of institution it had once tried to replace. PayPal didn't die, of course, it thrived, but it lost the spirit that had made it revolutionary. The dream of a peer-to-peer, borderless digital currency was buried under a mountain of fraud alerts, government regulations, and corporate bureaucracy. And that's where this story almost ends. But not quite. Because while PayPal's founders were cashing out, a new generation of technologists was just getting started. People who still believed in a truly decentralized digital currency, one that no government or corporation could ever control. Now, if you were to go back and read the original vision memos from the early days of PayPal, you can't help but feel a little frustrated. Because in those documents, you can see the DNA of Bitcoin, the borderless payments, the peer-to-peer transfers, the global reach. It's all there, just 10 years too early and one critical idea short. In a memo from 1999, Elon Musk wrote about creating a digital wallet that would let users hold multiple currencies and move money instantly without needing a central authority. He even talked about the need for a universal financial platform that could serve billions of people around the world. Sound familiar? It should, because these are exactly the principles that would later define Bitcoin. But here's what PayPal missed: the key breakthrough that made Bitcoin possible: decentralization. PayPal's founders understood that the internet was global and decentralized, but they never fully decentralized their money. They trusted their own servers. They held customer balances. They controlled the ledgers. And that made them a single point of failure. A centralized risk that Bitcoin would later avoid through distributed consensus and proof of work. In other words, PayPal tried to replace the financial system, but it still thought like a bank. It trusted itself, it wanted control, it needed compliance. And that ultimately is why it couldn't become Bitcoin. Satoshi Nakamoto solved this problem by removing trust from the system entirely. Instead of relying on a company to process transactions, Bitcoin relies on a network of miners, each verifying transactions independently. No single company can shut it down. No government can censor it. No CEO can sell it for $1.5 billion and walk away. That's the difference. That's what made Bitcoin revolutionary. And it's why PayPal, for all its brilliance and ambition, never became the world's first cryptocurrency. But here's the twist. If you talk to the PayPal mafia today, the guys who built it, sold it, and walked away, you'll find a lot of them have come back to crypto. Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, Reid Hoffman, they're all Bitcoin advocates now. It's as if 20 years later, they finally realized what they almost built and what they missed. But PayPal's story isn't the only pre-Bitcoin near miss in the history of digital money. A tastier offering was on the way. Because while Silicon Valley was dreaming about financial freedom, another, very different company, one known more for burgers and fries than blockchains, was about to launch its own digital coin. Before we get to that, we need to know what we learned from PayPal's almost crypto moment. A few things. First, we learned that vision isn't enough. The dream of a borderless digital currency is powerful, but without decentralization, it can crash against the hard walls of regulation and corporate control. We also learned that timing matters. PayPal tried to build a global payments network in the late 90s, when most people still thought of the internet as a novelty, not a necessity. The infrastructure wasn't ready. The culture wasn't ready. And maybe, just maybe, the technology itself wasn't ready. But there's a deeper lesson here too. It's the same lesson that David Chaum learned with DigiCash. The same lesson that eGold would learn in the early 2000s. If you're going to build digital money, if you're really going to challenge the financial system, you have to go all in. You can't compromise, you can't centralize, you can't play by the old rules. You have to break the rules, you have to redefine the game, and that's what Bitcoin did. But what if a company, a global brand, had tried to do the same thing? What if instead of a tech startup or a privacy pioneer, an established corporate giant had tried to invent its own digital coin? Would it have worked? Would the world have embraced it? Or would it have been too weird, too corporate, and too commercial to ever catch on? In our next episode, we'll explore the surprising, little-known, and mostly forgotten story of the McDonald's coin that almost was. A fast food currency that almost launched in the early 2000s, and what it teaches us about the strange, twisted path to real decentralized money. Yes, I am serious. McDonald's almost beat Satoshi to the punch. If you enjoyed this story, hit the like button and subscribe, because there's a lot more crypto history still hiding in the archives. Drop a comment. Would you have trusted your money to early PayPal if it was a cryptocurrency? You've been watching The Crypto Historian, where the past is encrypted and the truth is worth mining.